talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Great Captain.
Hello, WABC listeners and YouTube viewers. Today we have a very distinguished guest who I've known for quite a while. He's had a most interesting career, and he's going to tell you about his life.
So our guest today on Cop Talk is Lou Rice Jr., who's a retired DEA agent, and his dad is a proud detective from the 2-5 precinct up in Harlem. Lou, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And by the way, DEA stands for Drug Enforcement Agency.
Administration, Drug Enforcement Administration.
Not the Detectives Endowment Association.
Right, on this show they may
right.
confuse that with the DEA, Drug Enforcement, versus the Detective Endowment Association.
I'm glad we settled that in the beginning.
Okay, with your job. So why don't you give our audience a little bit of your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you became to where you are today.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. You know, I grew up in New York City, in Queens. Was raised in the projects. My mother worked for the Department of Social Services. My dad was a New York City detective. And I like to say proud New York City detective, because during that time, and sometimes a little bit now, it wasn't really the best thing to be known as a cop because people were always going after them. But he prided himself on being a cop, helping people that were under duress. And I grew up with that sense of service from my dad. Learned a lot from him. He and my parents married when they were 19. Wow. I looked at my kids when I was raising them, and at 19 I couldn't believe, my daughters or sons could be married at 19 and they weren't, because he didn't really experience the world. But he had a lot of knowledge, and I really learned a lot by listening to my dad.
So your dad, so you grew up in Queens, you said?
Yes.
Right? Where'd you go to school?
Queens. I went to Catholic school, elementary school, St. Joseph's in Astoria.
Oh, okay.
And I graduated from Bryan High School, and I went on to St. John's University, where I learned a lot about life and relationships and people. And the St. John's is populated by the Vincentians, and the Vincentian mission in the Catholic Church is all about service to others.
Bryan High School is still there in Astoria.
Still there.
St. Joe's still there?
St. Joe's is still there. I think the school is known by another name, but the church, I think, is still St. Joseph's.
Church is still there.
Yeah.
What was your degree?
Criminal justice. I was one of the first graduates at St. John's in criminal justice.
That's right. They have a criminal justice program.
Right, and that began my career with the DEA, to tell you the truth.
So you didn't take the NYPD test?
No.
Why not?
Well, my dad loved the NYPD, but he told me, he said, Lewis, if you get a shot to go with the feds, go with the feds.
Oh, okay.
And I did. And DEA was a young agency, was formed in July of 73, and I signed on in October of 1974. I mean, it wouldn't happen like that now, but at a career fair at St. John's University, had a DEA agent and a personal specialist, they called them back then. Now they're HR, and they explained what the agent's job was about, investigating narcotic dealers. And at that time, when you think about the early 70s, a lot of my friends had went to Vietnam, and these were, kids that we'd go out, party, hang out with the girls, just have a good time, just 18, 19, 20-year-olds, just having a great time. But when they came back from Vietnam, they came back addicted to heroin. And then you add to that, the struggle for civil rights of African Americans back in the 70s, for equity in housing, employment, and education, that the parents celebrated and supported the civil rights leaders of the day. The parents were devastated when their kids were addicted to heroin. And I saw friends of mine either overdose or live unfulfilled lives, going in and out of jail, trying to get money to buy heroin. And so when DEA came to the school and talked about the mission, in my head, I said, well, I'm going to go after the guys that destroyed my friends and their family. And I went into DEA at 21 years of age with a passion.
Good for you. Good for you.
Prior to that, when I was a young detective in narcotics, it was called the Federal Bureau of Narcotics.
Yes, that's right.
And the agents used to have gasoline credit cards, said Bunar.
Right. Well, you're right. That's a pre-agency before DEA.
Yeah, I'm talking about in the 60s.
Yeah, the
I
federal.
think Harry Anslinger maybe was
was one of the starters.
was the commissioner.
It was the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and in the
Howard
70s,
Safer was one of the agents.
Yes,
there
he
were like
was.
90 agents in New
He
York.
was former police commissioner Howard Safer.
Right.
He sure was.
We did some work with them.
Yeah.
And as I told you before, we worked with the famous John Maltz.
Yes, legend.
So Lou, so you came on in '74. You went on to the DEA.
Yes,
correct?
1974.
And now, why don't you bring us through your career, where you started out?
So I joined DEA right out of St. John's. I graduated in June. In October of '74, I swore in as a special agent with the DEA.
Where was the swearing in, by the way?
In the New York office. At that time, it was on 57th Street and 11th
Oh,
Avenue.
right.
Right.
By the Ford building, right? Yep.
It was right inside.
Yep.
You got a great
I know,
memory.
I know it well.
In
Yeah.
the Ford Lincoln Mercury building, we had the 17th, 18th, and 19th
Is that
floor.
where you worked, Kevin?
Yeah. Well, I worked in Midtown North.
Okay.
But as I was saying earlier, my family and the Hunt family is
Yes.
very close. Jamie Hunt Sr., Jr., and Brian Hunt.
Yes. Yeah.
So we used to go actually to the Christmas parties every year
Isn't that something with the DEA?
at the Ford building, which was where you guys were. Was it Kevin Gallagher?
Kevin Gallagher,
Yeah,
yes.
Kevin
was one of
Gallagher
the
as well, and-
legends. Right.
But I used to be there with Jamie and Brian Hunt.
Right.
So,
You have a great memory. And
at times.
Jamie Hunt Sr. was a legend in DEA.
Yes,
He
yes.
was one of the top agents, executives when I started in 1974.
Yes,
Sworn
great
in.
family,
Yes.
legendary legacy,
Yes,
fantastic.
yes.
But I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So-
So I swore in, but I was so young, I couldn't go to the agent school yet. So I was sworn in as a special agent, but I couldn't conduct investigations. So I was assigned to an enforcement group, which is a group of about 12 agents led by a supervisor, and they conduct all type of narcotic investigations. So I would learn by talking to the agents in the group, reading the case files, and understanding a little bit more about what federal narcotics is about. And then in January of 1975, I went to the school, DEA basic agent school in Washington, D.C. And then I graduated several months later, and I came back to New York, and now I'm a full-fledged DEA special agent, and I was issued a badge and a gun to begin my career conducting narcotic investigations.
So the academy was in D.C.?
In D.C. at that time, yeah.
So how long was the academy?
The academy at that time in the 70s was 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
It was classroom, going out to Quantico twice a week to do firearms training and what they call field training exercises. That was basically the hallmark. And that's where you would actually simulate narcotic investigations that have taken place throughout the world. And when I say simulate, I mean you'd interview people, write reports, conduct surveillance, do mock arrest, and get back into a courtroom, and they'd have a judge and a defense attorney and the United States attorney and preparing you for actually what was going to happen if you graduated and went out to the field. And those field training exercises would start usually on a Friday afternoon about 1 o'clock with somebody coming into the office and giving you information. And they'd go all Friday night and all day Saturday, Sunday, and then they would end Sunday afternoon, and you'd replay them the next day, Monday, in the classroom. And when I say replay them, a lot of them were recorded. The surveillances were recorded, the debriefings were recorded, and so you can see what you did well and what you need improvement on.
Do you know how long the academy is today?
Yes, today it's about 17, 18 weeks.
I was going to say, yeah.
Night and day difference.
Almost double.
And it's at Quantico.
Quantico.
Yeah.
Okay. Cap?
Can you tell us about some famous case you worked on or cases?
Sure. I did a lot of undercover work when I came on in the 70s. When you think about the 70s, you think about the instability, the economic situation in New York, unpopular war in Vietnam, the racial tension, and on top of that, you think about the heroin. Nixon was president. President Nixon, he formed the Drug Enforcement Administration, and he coined the term war on drugs because we had a heroin problem, and New York was ground zero for the heroin. And so when I came in, you can imagine at 21 years of age, I was working a lot of undercover all over the city. Very dangerous assignments, but we had a good team and we had good leadership, and you really felt that you were helping your fellow citizens, so you would risk your life to try to take these drug dealers off the street. I did a lot of that. One case in particular, it's not like TV. In other words, so we would have a meeting, and we'd meet in the office, maybe 15 people, and go over our game plan, which would identify, let's say, me as the undercover agent, the location where I'm going to go, who I was going to meet, and we'd have photographs of that person so everybody could see what cars I was going to drive.
Like a TAC plan.
Like a TAC plan, so everybody knew who was going to follow me. But the difference is, we had our plan, but, the drug dealers weren't reading our plan. So although we had our plan, what we were going to do, we had to be able to, and it was a quote for DEA, expect the unexpected, realizing that this is what we expect to happen, but it may not happen. So we got to be nimble and ready to shift to reduce the opportunity to danger for anyone. And when you think about drugs, especially drug dealers, drug enforcement in all police departments is a specialty assignment where men and women rotate in and rotate out. Why? Because of the danger and the amount of jail time involved in it and the possibility of being corruption. So as a single mission agency, our training has to be above board. And you have to have good supervisors that realize that maybe the agent is too extended. He may or she may not realize it, but we may need to take them out because they're missing things. And when you're working undercover, it's not just the verbal. You got to do the nonverbal, because you got to realize, especially back then in the 70s, everybody went to trial, no matter what the evidence was. You could have recordings, you could have photographs, you could have the drugs, you could have seized the money that you paid the guy, that you seized on a search warrant. Everybody went to jail. Everybody went to trial room. And you have to recall with clarity, what the person was wearing, what they said, where you were. So we required a lot of pressure, a lot of good training, but mostly a really commitment to do something about the drug situation in the country. I was fortunate to work with a great bunch of people that were really, really dedicated.
Now, what month did you retire in 2001? Were you here for 9/11?
I retired just before 9/11.
Right before, okay. All right. And then after, when you retired, what did you, did you have a plan or something? What did you get involved in?
When you think about 9/11, 9/11 was a game changer for corporate security, and especially in New York. A lot of men and women in law enforcement, they're able to retire after 20 years, sometimes some as early as 20, 25 years. They're still young enough for a second career.
Sure.
When 9/11 took place, as we remember, close to 3,000 civilians were killed in the trade tower that Tuesday. That next day, employees walked in and they said to corporate America, how are you going to protect us? And so some people in the corporate security position got a bump up. Some people got shown the door. And I was fortunate to pick up a second career with the Estee Lauder companies, where I spent a little over 21 years there and develop and create their global security team.
What did that involve?
Oh, it involved the full range of a Fortune 500 company security, from loss prevention, because we have the retail stores that sell the products in the United States, mostly department stores and perfumeries, let's say in Europe. It involved the supply chain facilities, manufacturing plants in Melville, Bristol, Pennsylvania, and Switzerland. It involved the crisis management, because we're always concerned about those type of issues, the full travel security, the full range of security, to make sure that employees, when they come to work, that they're feeling comfortable about their job, that they don't have to worry about their personal security, so they can concentrate on selling the product to our fellow citizens.
So prior to you getting them, there was no security?
No, they had it. They had it. But 9/11 was a game changer, because prior to 9/11, you'd waltz into a security company, maybe meet the CEO, getting a cup of coffee in Midtown, and, oh, yeah, we need some security, and maybe do minor stuff. a woman's got a pocketbook stolen, or you need an identification badge or something like that. But, after 9/11, because when you're hiring for security, if you're hiring right, usually your security person is the only person that can call FBI, DEA, NYPD at an executive level and get a phone call back. And what else can that person do? Get information. And as we know from our law enforcement days, and even in business, information is power. And so the information you get back allows the C-suite to make the right decisions.
Did your job involve international travel?
Oh, absolutely. It's a global company. I put people on the ground in London, people on the ground in Hong Kong, people on the ground in Paris and Switzerland, South Africa. I was brought in basically to develop that corporate security team globally.
You never even offered me a bottle of aftershave lotion.
See, typical figures, right? Typical cop.
I'll make it up, I promise.
That's what we do.
It's easy to get stuck reaching for the same familiar fruits and vegetables, even when you know a colorful variety is key. Balance of Nature's fruits and veggie supplements don't replace fruits and vegetables, but it makes it easy to add more variety to what you already eat. With 31 ingredients that are whole fruits and vegetables, switching it up is easy because we've already taken care of the hard part. Go to balanceofnature.com and get a free fiber and spice supplement, plus 35% off your first set as a new preferred customer by using discount code POD.
Can you talk about the case in Miami you were involved in?
Sure. So there's a lot of cases. When I was in Miami, that's my first supervisory assignment. I left New York after 8 years. I got a transfer to Kingston, Jamaica, working in the embassy there. And my first supervisory after Kingston, Jamaica, was into Miami. And this is 1984 to 1986. I like to explain Miami, my version of Miami back then, because the cartels were very strong in Miami, was that when you landed at Miami International, they gave you a kilogram of coke and a 9mm, because everybody had guns and large amounts of coke down there. And that was an eye-opener for me, because coming out of New York, well, everybody could say they could get you drugs, but everybody couldn't get you drugs. And a lot of times we'd go out there and a guy would promise, I can get you an ounce of heroin, I get you a half a kilo of cocaine, and you'd be there 5, 6, 7 hours and whatnot, and he couldn't get anything. But in Miami, you can go to a nice hotel, talk to the concierge, and probably sooner or later get a couple ounces of cocaine. Everybody had cocaine down there. It was so prevalent down there that the leader of the office designated 2 enforcement groups. And I explained before earlier, my career was led by one supervisor, about 12 to 15 agents. One handled to handle America, the 50 states. One handled one half, other handled the other half, and we handled the East Coast. So 20 some odd states in the East Coast, they were coming into Miami as like a source country to get cocaine. And so agents were constantly down there following people, developing leads, and we were assigned to help them out with these investigations.
You worked on the torture murder of DEA agent Enrique
Camarena, yeah. Unfortunately, that was one of the hallmark days of the DEA in 1985, that our agent, Enrique Camarena, former Marine, was kidnapped, tortured, and executed in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he was an agent that did what we were doing in the United States, taking information and trying to develop these cases to the highest level to get the ringleaders of these organizations. And usually the ringleaders don't use drugs themselves. Usually the ringleaders make sure that their families don't use drugs, but they realize the power of drugs, the addictive qualities, that they can make significant amounts of money. And Enrique Camarena was in Guadalajara. He was so successful at that, and he was upsetting these drug guys. And unlike in the U.S., pretty much organized criminals know that if you go after physically an agent or a prosecutor, the case is not going to stop. It's only going to be highlighted and fast-tracked. So they leave, law enforcement alone. But in Mexico, these guys figured they could rival the local government. And they did what they normally do: kidnapped, tortured, and executed Camarena. We had a good leader at that time in DEA, A guy by the name of Jack Lawn was a former FBI agent, and he came over during the Reagan administration to understand what DEA is doing and try to give the best practices of the FBI to DEA. And when that hit him and he found out about it, he made sure we had justice. They created a special operation called Operation Leander, and they gave those men and women that worked that operation carte blanche to go over to the United States and out the world to get these guys and to send a message that if you kill one of ours, we're going to get one of yours. And it took 40 years. But Caro Quintero, who was the mastermind, who was arrested in Mexico, then released, and then arrested, and then became a fugitive, he's sitting in federal jail in Brooklyn now, arraigned. And that was a good day, not only for DEA, but for law enforcement in general.
True.
And I was so happy that the leader of the New York office, Frank Tarantino, invited me to come down there to the courthouse in the Eastern District of New York to sit in the courtroom when he was arraigned.
Oh, wow.
And the power about that is they had to move the arraignment from the normal courthouse to the ceremonial courthouse because there were so many agents and police officers in there with their raid jackets. And so for 40 years, he was able to abscond and not be held accountable. And when he walked through that door and looked out in the courtroom, he realized that in the United States and DEA, we don't forget.
Yeah, good job.
You know, you mentioned the FBI before. Was there much interchange between agencies in terms of switching careers?
You know, there was a lot of back and forth with the FBI and DEA. At one point, I think it was Reagan, President Reagan, and Meese was the Attorney General, and there was a thought about merging DEA into the FBI, and they brought over about 7 executives from the FBI and put them in key positions in DEA in Washington, and figuring out, is this the best thing to do? And that happened the second time again. Seems like it happens every now and then when Janet Reno was the Attorney General and Bill Clinton was the president. And fortunately, both times when people looked at that and came back, the recommendation was to keep DEA separate from the FBI.
But that was a merge. I'm talking about voluntary transfers between agencies.
Somewhat, not a lot. I mean, there were during the time of these, not even mergers, but when these thoughts about commingling, there was some thought about, you know, we'd have a DEA agent from, let's say, go to FBI headquarters, and FBI headquarters would send one guy over to us. When they were thinking about merging DEA into the FBI, I remember they had all the supervisors, the DEA supervisors, go down to Quantico for a day to, you know, understand the FBI's laws and the laws that they enforce and how they conduct investigations, but it never went beyond that. But we did share, I mean, we were down there in Quantico with them, with the FBI. I mean, they're the big guns of the Justice Department are DEA, the FBI, and ATF now, and so there's a lot of relationships together. And there were one point we had administrators. Tom Constantine was the administrator of DEA, and Louis Freeh was the administrator of the FBI. We'd have special agent in charge conferences, SAC conferences, and the SACs are, I compare it to the United States Senate. These are the leaders of the offices throughout the country. And so maybe we had 25 people, the FBI had maybe 35 people. We'd spend a day together in Quantico, you know, for relationship building and also understanding how, you know, cases that we're doing, especially in the international front that are involving narcotics, have a, you know, some inroads to terrorism and vice versa. But at a working level, we work very well with the FBI and the other police agencies through task force operations.
So they'll bring us back to Detroit. You were
Sure.
the youngest agent in charge, right?
I
back
was,
then
yeah.
in Detroit. Why don't you tell us about Detroit?
So Detroit was an assignment after I left New York. I was there for about a year. It was a quick assignment. I went out there. I was the youngest special agent in charge when I was sent there. They had a problem there, a heroin problem. I had some internal problems in the office also that they wanted me to get out there and sort of straighten out and bring people together. And I've seen to, if I look back at my career, I've went to a lot of organizations where they had problems and they needed somebody to come in and get the organization back together, focused on the mission of law enforcement. And, I would usually do that by bringing people into the office and talking to them. Yeah. Find out from their perspective what's working well, what needs improvement, and then to the extent that we can, and I always got support from Washington, have an off-site meeting for about 2 or 3 days, bring in some outside speakers, and a fellowship, because, it's a human situation. When people sit down and they have a meal together, they tend to, understand each other a little bit better professionally and personally, Right. And sometimes that's all it takes, But you have to bring people together because the enemy is not in the office. The enemy is the drug guys outside.
Yeah.
How did the promotional system work? Was there a test, or oral exam, written exam?
That's a good question. Initially, it was a lot of who you know.
That's not uncommon.
And then that changed because a lot of people were complaining and filing beefs and things like that. So they came to an actual promotion system where it's documented. The agents can read exactly what they need to do and aspire to do it, and then the board would make the promotions. And the thing is, DEA, the socialization is to get the highest level drug dealer. And so if we're in a city, let's say like New York, and you're seeing somebody selling drugs on the corner, that's not the highest level drug deal. That may be an eyesore for the neighborhood, for the community. They may call the local police, and DEA may help the local police out to take that guy down. But DEA's focus is the people that are supplying that guy and other people and people involved in the transportation of drugs. So, and with those cases, you're working along with a federal prosecutor. Most DEA cases, before the arrests are made, it's 6 months, 7 months, maybe a year, before any arrest is made. And during that time, you're working closely with the federal prosecutor. And the federal prosecutor wants to be convinced that he or she can convict this guy or woman and whatnot when the case is over. And like most prosecutors, they're very cautious, and they're going to want more evidence than they need because they don't want to have a not guilty verdict. So the advantage, I think, of DEA, it's a worldwide investigative agency. Mm-hmm. And so before we go out to meet somebody to discuss narcotics, we need to know the full name. We need to know where that person lives, what type of vehicles that person drives. Well, they're in a family situation, they have a girlfriend. We know all about that person because we're an investigative agency. So unlike TV, when somebody says, I got to say you're a killer when we run out there, no, we're not working like that.
No, it's TV.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
What I remember was back when it was the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, yes. When we worked with them, all they wanted to know was what kind of car does the guy have.
Right. Well, they were seizing cars.
They would seize a car. Right. If it was a Lincoln or a Cadillac,
right.
They would be interested.
Right.
Because we went to them for the money. We didn't have the large amount of money that they had. So that was the deal. You give us the money for the big buy, and we'll give you the car.
Well, you mentioned the money. I mean, at one point, we didn't have the money, the feds. We were going to Sterling Johnson's office, who was the special narcotics prosecutor back then, because he had a bunch of money. And Sterling would help support our cases, but he would say also, if you get somebody, you make the arrest, you get somebody to cooperate, I want the guy that's going to cooperate. It's funny, too. A lot of people think the feds always have money, but you just saw a government shut down, so there was no money there in the till for almost 45 days and whatnot. So, but working together and the asset sharing, and exactly back in the 70s, that's how our fleet was. Our fleet was, you'd have agents driving around in Cadillacs and Eldorados and Mercedes because these is what the drug dealers were driving, and the drug dealers were conducting illegal activity inside those vehicles, so they were seizable by the U.S. government. And then we put them out into the fleet and drive them around ourselves.
Cool. Lou, what about, tell us about Frank Lucas.
Sure.
Talk about that.
So it was an interesting case. In 1978, three members of the NYPD, I think it was Manhattan North, came over to the feds. And at that time, in 1978, we had a group of senior agents assigned to the Southern District of New York and a group of senior agents assigned to the Eastern District of New York. I was assigned to the Eastern District. And when they brought the case over, they had spent probably about a year delivering large amounts of mannite and quinine to Harlem drug dealers. And mannite and quinine are the essential diluents used to cut heroin. And so they knew that these guys were involved in the drug business, but they had no drugs and they had no drug conversation. They pushed their witness to ask these guys what they were doing with the mannite and quinine, and they just shut them down. Okay. And so they brought it over to the feds, and looking at these, I think it was probably about 11 people, they all had been convicted previously for heroin distribution. They had photographs of deliveries of boxes, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, mannite and quinine, going over for a year. And we had a pretty innovative and aggressive federal prosecutor. And the federal prosecutor said, I'm going to charge them with heroin distribution. And the theory of the government's case is going to be this. Number one, they're paying 10 times the normal amount for mannite and quinine. They think one is a baby laxative and one is used to treat malaria, okay? They've all been previously convicted of heroin trafficking, okay? And so he said, we're going to charge them. But we also knew it's New York City. Eastern District is Brooklyn, New York, and we're going to have a New York jury that says, where's the beef? So I went back and did some research and found out that Frank Lucas was cooperating, and he was cooperating from inside the jail. And at that time, in the federal prison system, there were 3 locations where they would put cooperating federal witnesses. One was at the MCC in Manhattan, which is no longer there. And there was another one on the West Coast in San Diego, and I forget what the third one is. Frank was in San Diego. So myself and the prosecutor, we flew out to San Diego. We met Frank. We told him about the case in Harlem. We told him who the defendants were, and he knew all of them. He did business with them, business with all of these guys for many, many years. And when I said I found out he was cooperating, he had cooperated, and people were going to jail, and nobody went to trial. Once they found out he was a witness, they pled guilty. But this is the only case he would have to testify in, because in these guys' mind, also the drug dealers' mind, they figured the government has no drugs, we had no money, we had no flash in terms of seizures. All it was going to do is testimony and conversation that the drug dealers felt that they were going to beat the case. So they all went to trial, you know. But you could have heard a pin drop when Frank got in that courtroom.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I tell people the time I spent with him, getting him ready to testify at trial. I mean, we work on the weekends, me and a couple of other senior agents. We brought him to the courthouse. We'd have him sit in the jury box, sit in the chair where he's going to sit. We explain the process. He's going to get sworn in. We're going to tell him where the jury's going to sit, what the judge is going to sit, to keep him more familiar with the case. But it was like getting a PhD in international drug trafficking.
You know, Lou, before we go, one more thing I want to touch on. You were involved with the Major League Baseball and NBA and National Hockey League. I find that very interesting. Could you tell our audience about it?
Sure. So just before I retired, Kevin Hallahan, who retired from the NYPD, was with Major League Baseball. Horace Balmer, who retired from the NYPD.
Who I worked with in
the NBA, right? And Dennis Cunningham, who retired from the NYPD, also was with the National Hockey League. And they came over to us, and DEA New York, and they said, we want to put together a rookie training program because of the clubs and the drugs. Yep. These guys are being susceptible to this stuff. So I work with them, and Mike Francisi, who you see on one of the YouTube channels, put his piece in there in terms of what the mob does. And they did a real 30-minute fast-moving video with music and scenes and clubs, especially in New York City, to prepare these guys, because you're in New York City, you have a lot of money, you know, everybody's smiling in your face, but the goal is to be able to make money when you can no longer play the sport. And that how is that going to happen? Through endorsements. And so it was to help them with decision making. And you mentioned that it's just like in the news not too long ago. Last week was a baseball player. The week before that, an NBA player. We're right back to where we are. And to me, it's even more problematic now because of the college athletes and the NIL, name, image, and likeness. I mean, you got these young people that are not exposed to the world and people, you know, trying to take advantage of them. And it's not like they're asking them not to shoot. They're trying to make the point spread. And so, hey, you can win the game, but we don't want you to win by, you know, we want you to win by 3 points instead of 10 points and whatnot. Yeah. And so my feeling is when people know better, they do better. So I'm sure that that those professional sports, especially the college and being in New York City, are talking to people in law enforcement and finding out, you know, what they've did in the past and how we can make that relevant for the students and the players that are now around in 2025, speaking to them in the language that they understand.
Great concept. I like it. Captain?
Well, Lou, this has been a great interview.
Thank you.
You're a great success story.
Thank you.
2 careers, 3 pensions. Who can do better than you?
Exactly.
Now you got to enjoy life.
Yeah, that is the plan. You know, I was just fortunate enough to work with some great people. You know, and the public, you know, fortunately the way we are, you know, they hear the negative stuff that happens in the papers and the media. You know, the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads and whatnot. That they don't realize behind the scenes the great work that people are doing, trying to rescue people and trying to save people. You know, that never makes the papers each and every day. You know. That's
why we have this show, to get the good word out.
And thank you for what you're doing to get that out.
But Lou Jr., thank you for being our guest, son of legendary Lou Rice Sr., a 2-5 squad guy.
There you go.
And,
proud member of the 2-5.
But thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
It was a great interview.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Cop Talk at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. And until next time, Captain.
And you can also see the well-dressed guest on YouTube and some other social media.
Thank you. Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, God bless your law enforcement throughout the world, and God bless our U.S. military. Thank you.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.